Hey guys, I haven't made a video in a while. If you've used Twitter with any regularity over the past few years, you've probably noticed that it's like a fucking shit show on there. It's becoming an increasingly hostile environment. There's this culture that seems to be growing where random people's harmless tweets are being subjected to intense scrutiny by hordes of anonymous people. So for simplicity's sake, let's refer to these people as Twitter trolls, which is how they self-identify. Although I'm not sure if trolling is the correct term for what they do. What I'm seeing is more akin to bullying or harassment. But what I find really interesting is that unlike the trolls that we're used to, which are majority right-wing, the kind that go after marginalized groups, use slurs for shock value, and generally just try to go against politically correct society, these Twitter trolls are far left, mostly identifying as communists or anarchists of some sort, and the way they operate is different. See, one thing about right-wing trolls is that they don't really care about, having the moral high ground, or really how they come across at all. Now, trolls on Twitter take the idea of being socially conscious or woke and kind of weaponize it in a way that justifies them saying cruel things to people. And this way, at a glance, it can kind of just look like they're trying to hold people accountable for their actions. But I've been on Twitter a while, and I can tell that that's not exactly what's going on anymore. Now, of course, there's going to be people who say fucked up shit and need to be called out for it on Twitter. And I agree that some level of backlash is important so that people, can't just say anything. There does have to be some type of interpersonal accountability between each other. But everything has a limit, and I think somewhere along the way, Twitter has lost the distinction between what is holding people accountable for their actions and what's more of a form of petty cyberbullying. And the way troll Twitter works is kind of interesting. It's half social justice warrior and half YouTube comment from 2008. They're basically people who are on Twitter in order to mock and incite bullying towards other people on Twitter. And that alone doesn't seem like anything new. People are harassing people on the internet all the time, clearly. But what's different about this is that despite the fact that they spend most of their time inciting mockery and hatred towards people, they always try to claim an angle of superiority about it. And the way they do this is by picking targets that they believe will be viewed as deserving of this harassment. So maybe the target said something problematic in the past, or maybe they're just a privileged type of person that a lot of people are not going to feel bad for, but they just tend to try to create this illusion that they're punching up. And this kind of shields them from being seen as a bully. But the truth is, more often than not, they're calling people out for things that are not really that problematic. And oftentimes it's just something cringy that they think is embarrassing.
I never asked for a free ride.
Now, the majority of bullying on Twitter is done through something called the quote tweet feature. And Twitter is unique as a social media platform in that it allows things to spread very quickly. And the quote tweet function is one of the things that facilitates this. Basically, quote tweeting allows you to capture someone else's tweet, bring it to your page, and pair it with a tweet of your own. Can't imagine how this could go wrong. And the original purpose of the quote tweet was basically to add, context to something. If you wanted to comment on something, it just makes a lot more sense to be able to include what you're commenting on. I'm sure it was meant for discourse. But of course, if you have an audience of bullies, it's very easy to use this feature to direct harassment towards somebody. Twitter trolls love quote tweets. In fact, they'll almost never engage directly with you in the comments. Instead, they pretty much only quote tweet things so that it shows up for their followers. And this way they can make sure that there's visibility on everything they do or say. So if you were trying to have a discussion with them one-on-one, they'll often just quote tweet your comment and make sure that every single thing you say to them is broadcast to their followers. I mean, you wouldn't want to mock someone in private. What's the point? So the way their process usually works is someone tweets something that makes them a target. Now, this could be a questionable take, a cringy TikTok. Maybe they say something that could be considered problematic, but to be honest, it could be almost nothing if they already dislike you enough. Pretty much anything that can be mocked is fair game. So next, that tweet gets quote tweeted by a troll, usually with something wildly mean. After this, the person who made the original tweet will see it, and they'll react. And usually they're taken aback by how hostile the quote tweet was. They'll feel like they're being bullied, so they'll defend themselves, like I think any normal person would in that situation. So typically what troll Twitter does next is they'll dig through previous tweets from that person, basically scouring their account to see if there's anything problematic they've said. And they go deep. Like, there's an advanced Twitter search feature, so people can search for like any word that, might be problematic today and, look back and see if you used it back when you created your account 10 years ago. And once they find something that they can work with, they'll screenshot it and post it to their followers, framing the person that they bullied as a bad person who is deserving of that bullying. So actually a large part of bullying on Twitter is about dredging up old tweets. Finding something someone posted like a decade ago and holding it up to today's standards. And using it as a representation of what that person currently believes. And guys, I'm gonna be super honest with you. In the 2000s, I said a few things that might be problematic by today's standards. I think we're all aware that there are problematic things we've said and done in our lives. We've all made mistakes that we regret. We've all held opinions that we no longer hold. It's like part of being alive. But the secret is, Twitter trolls are not here to educate people and make them better. They're here to vent frustration, and they do it by attacking other people. The ironic part of this is that a lot of times you can't even search their account back to see if they said anything problematic, because Twitter troll accounts are so often suspended for like hate speech that none of them have any post history. So it's not really a fair playing field. So if the person being bullied continues to engage, whether it's to explain themselves or like questioning why they're being critiqued so harshly, the situation always gets worse. No matter how you respond, they will always claim that you're taking them too seriously. And if you keep responding to them, even though they keep responding to you, they'll claim that you are the one that is obsessed with them. And they'll say that like you're having a mental breakdown or you're like spiraling for responding. They'll say that you can't take criticism and that, you're just being held accountable. And the longer the interaction is dragged out, the more trolls get involved. And typically the overwhelming negative attention and like barrage of hate from all these random accounts that they didn't even know existed will cause the original poster to either go private, or sometimes they'll even leave the platform. And this sounds extreme, but like it happens every day on Twitter. And it takes very little to be a target of these trolls. I mean, one time it happened to me because I said I didn't like Lady Gaga's sweatpants merch. But really, like anybody who's regularly active on Twitter who has any sort of following probably isn't going to be able to avoid coming across a situation like this. So as an example, earlier this year, was it last year? What time is it? This e-girl went viral on Twitter for being like, honestly, just kind of like cute and funny, and she had this very interesting, like super thick New Jersey accent. And this sudden fame made her account blow up so that she gained like 100,000 followers overnight. Within the first 24 hours of her being on Twitter, a user quote tweets her and calls her out as being a white supremacist. The reasoning being that they checked who she was following, and she was following a few right-wing people, like Blair White and like Ben Shapiro or something. So therefore, she must be a white supremacist herself. Now, if you're a reasonable person, you know that following somebody on Twitter is not an endorsement of their beliefs. It's completely understandable and normal to want to keep up with people on the opposing party to see, what they're saying, so you can kind of refute it. Like you want to stay informed so you can be ready to shoot down whatever like bullshit they're going to throw at you. But for troll Twitter, this accusation was enough for them to run with it. And the call-out tweet racked up over 46,000 likes. Side note, the troll also thought that her accent was a racist caricature because she had never heard a white person speak with a New Jersey accent before. Anyway, this resulted in that girl getting hate from thousands of accounts, and all of these accounts acted like they were being righteous and just holding her accountable for her shitty beliefs. She deserved the bullying because she's a white supremacist. Eventually she had to make a YouTube video to explain the situation and like try to put a stop to the like libelous claims that people were making about her. And it pretty much calmed down after that, but it was a risk. Like responding to a situation like that with a YouTube video can very easily backfire and make it worse, even though she's completely innocent. People will just say that you're lying. There's really nothing you can do to convince them. And this is the danger of the troll Twitter phenomenon. People can really claim anything, and the crowd will just believe it. Anyone can make any claim about anyone, and if the drama is juicy enough, people really just can't resist. And this is especially true if they already have a dislike for that person. And although most of the drama will only last for a few days, I've seen many situations where things that are claimed about people that were totally untrue will follow them for months and sometimes years on Twitter. Like, is this e-girl from New Jersey a white supremacist? No. Did 46,000 people believe she was? Yeah. Like, this stuff can get nasty. And every time I feel like I've seen the worst of it, something surprises me. So, retired model Chrissy Teigen has been a punching bag for Twitter for a while now. And it's mostly because they just see her tweets as cringy and try hard. You know, like, they dislike her because she tries to seem relatable, but also has a lot of money. And then she slips up a lot where, you know, she kind of accidentally flaunts how much money she has. Like, this AirPods tweet, like, gets brought up every time she does anything as a reason why she should, you know, she deserves harassment. Anyway, in late September, Chrissy Teigen suffered a pretty late-term miscarriage, which is an incredibly devastating thing for a person to experience. And for whatever reason, soon after it happened, she posted about it on social media. And I'm assuming she did this because she was visibly pregnant. And I believe she had tweeted right before she went to the hospital that she was going to be induced. So it's not like she could have kept it a secret. Like, people are going to ask about the baby. Now, troll Twitter, upon hearing of the miscarriage, took it upon themselves to criticize the grieving mother for posting about it. They called her weird and said it was psycho for her to stage a miscarriage Instagram photo shoot. They claimed it was an example of Instagram culture gone insane, and that she was somehow clout chasing by posting about her miscarriage. So let's take a step back here. How fucking terrible of a person do you have to be to criticize a woman for how she chooses to deal with losing a baby? As far as I'm concerned, you don't get to have an opinion on that. Like, in real life, you would not say that to a woman who posted about her miscarriage on social media. You sit down and shut up. Like, just the fact that people were bold enough on Twitter to openly mock a woman going through a miscarriage is wild to me. And I think it speaks as just something very insidious about this platform. Like, clearly something is wrong with discourse on Twitter. It's broken. So we know what the trolls do. But why do they do it? What is making people act in this way, saying things that they would never say in real life? So a part of it is definitely something called online disinhibition effect. And this is a term used to describe the lowering of psychological restraints that people have when they're, like, interacting with people not face to face. And there's actually a specific subset of it called toxic disinhibition. And that describes an increased tendency towards things like online flaming, insults, that kind of thing. So yeah, like, that sounds right. But it's not exactly new to see people behaving that way online. And there's definitely more to this particular phenomenon. I'm more interested in the way that they're approaching the harassment. One thing I've noticed is they really kind of act as kind of a hive mind community. They're kind of organized. They have systems. And they even have, like, shared slang and similar looking profiles. Like, once you know what to look for, you can call out a Twitter troll in a second. Personally, I think they enjoy the camaraderie. Many of the people caught up in this group are young and very impressionable. Say like 18, 19, 20. And the troll Twitter community is notoriously easy to assimilate into. All you have to do is start dragging people. And then also start liking and commenting on other people's draggings of people. They kind of back each other up. And I think a lot of the people that fall into this group might not have that kind of support in real life. Actually, if you read their tweets in between the bully tweets, you can see that most of them definitely don't have it in real life. And this is purely anecdotal, but I feel like since the pandemic, there's been a big rise in online bullying. And that would make sense because obviously the pandemic has stopped people from socializing and forming more bonds in real life. So if you combine this with the fact that they're all, like, radical left communists, and most of them identify as some sort of queer, there's, like, a sense of unity and, like, shared experience among them. But what I really feel is, like, the root of the problem here, it's that feeling of power that comes with bullying, and that control you feel when you're able to change people's perception of somebody else. And it's very easy to form an addiction to this feeling of power if you just don't have a lot of that in real life. And I think it starts slow and small. It's like what starts as a justified call out of someone who actually said something, really damaging, can quickly turn into you actively searching for people to call out, to try to feel that rush again, and so that you can be the one to expose them. And over time, you'll find that your threshold for what is okay to expose someone for gets lower and lower. And eventually, you're just making bad faith callouts to satisfy that desire, or to satisfy a personal grudge. I've had a few friends at this point who I've witnessed join Twitter and slowly get caught up in the harassment theater of it all. They start to participate in it themselves, and the next thing I know, I'm seeing them writing extremely cruel things on Twitter that I've never heard them say in real life. It's a trap that's really easy to fall into, because it tends to make people feel better about themselves when they're able to compare themselves to someone who is worse. If they're bad, I'm good in comparison. And if you don't have a lot of self-confidence, this is an easy way to feel better about yourself in the short term. And on this topic, it's very interesting. The people in this community also seem to be very aware of and engaged in follower counts and influence. And at first I thought this was sort of strange because so many of their accounts are semi-anonymous. So it's weird that they would tie any personal worth to it, but they do. And it also happens to be true that dragging people on Twitter and exposing people is a very easy way to get attention and gain followers. So I'm not surprised that a lot of young, impressionable people are doing that, especially because social media fame is one of the most valued things to young people today. They'll also assume that you care about followers and engagement. And no matter if you have a lot of followers or almost none, they'll use that as an argument against you. If you don't have a lot, they'll say you're a nobody. But if you do have a lot, they'll say that it's embarrassing that you would engage with them because somebody with as much influence as you should be concerned with other things. And we are just troll Twitter and have no effect on you. If you have a lot of followers and you respond to them, they'll often claim that you're the one who is sending harassment towards them because people who follow your account will see their post. So basically they're accusing you of the exact same thing they did to you just for responding to harassment. And if you have any friends or followers that do respond and back you up, they have a term for that in order to dismiss them. And that is called the pick-me. And basically a pick-me is a person who is only agreeing with you because they want your attention. So basically they're sucking up to you. And that does happen sometimes. But I've seen people refer to absolutely anybody as a pick-me. They'll call anybody who agrees with you this, as if they can't possibly imagine that anybody would agree with you in good faith. So I hear a lot of people refer to this as cancel culture, and although I think it's related, I think what troll Twitter does is kind of its own distinct thing. If anything, it's closer to a co-opting and weaponization of cancel culture. It's how cancel culture could be misused for personal gain, but really I don't find it distinct from just general harassment. And in my opinion, calling it cancel culture is giving it too much credit, because cancel culture is tied into this concept of justice and accountability. And I don't buy that as the goal of Twitter trolls for a second. Because if they really cared about people changing and learning, they would not be approaching it in this way. Being harassed by an angry mob of people calling you names is not going to make anybody change. If it has any effect, it's just going to make them feel like a victim, and they're just going to disengage. So I think this comparison to cancel culture is actually an asset for troll Twitter, because it means that whenever their harassment is called out for what it is, they can defend themselves from any dissent by claiming that the original poster is just resisting being held accountable. Guys, if you spend any time on Twitter at all, it's really obvious that trolls are hoping for people to fuck up. They're looking for that excuse. They're actively seeking out fuck-ups. So let's move on to the effects of the harassment, because Twitter loves to downplay this. So obviously troll Twitter gets accused of bullying a lot, and they have a solution for this, and it's called gaslighting. So they have this idea that because it's troll Twitter, nothing they say on there should be taken seriously. As in, you shouldn't care or react to any of the horrible things they say about you. And they often say this at the same time that they're making very serious allegations about people. They put forth this narrative that people are overreacting to their attack, and they're even pathetic for caring about it. They'll say that cyberbullying isn't real, because you can just log off Twitter. They say that because the general age of troll Twitter is fairly young, that it's immature of you to be affected by the harassment. And this isn't even entirely true. I mean, I've seen people well into their 40s bullying people on Twitter. Some will say if you can't handle the abuse, maybe Twitter is just not for you. Like, apparently Twitter is the platform where you come to harass people and be harassed, and if you don't want to be harassed, you shouldn't be here. It's all these, like, really bizarre, grasping at straws excuses that I really don't feel the need to entertain. Like, how else would you expect someone to react to hundreds of people spreading libelous claims about you? The idea that it doesn't matter or that it's harmless is a ridiculous argument. It's like they're holding this power over people and affecting people's lives while also claiming that they don't have any power and that they can't affect you. And to me, I kind of see this downplaying of their effect on people as them kind of like absolving themselves of the guilt they might feel for making other people feel miserable constantly. Because it's like really absurd behavior. So I think my main concern with this whole thing is that there's a lot of people on Twitter who are not aware of this community. And when those people are dragged through the mud on Twitter, they tend to take the comments they get more seriously than they should. Like, regular people that signed up to Twitter for fun will all of a sudden see all of this hate directed towards them. And it could be for anything. Like, it is not necessarily for something problematic. And when they see all of these people saying the nastiest shit about them, they really wonder, it's like, did I do something really wrong? And the less they know about the way troll Twitter works, the more taken off guard they're gonna be by that harassment, and the more real it's gonna feel. Like, they don't know that this is a community of people that do this every day. Like a new target every day, sometimes multiple in the same day. And when you don't know where opinions are coming from, you don't know how much weight to give them. Like, if someone calls you an asshole, that feels bad. You might wonder, am I an asshole? Why would they say that? But if you saw that same person call 10 other people assholes that day, you start to think, oh, this is okay. This is more about you. Personally, I don't take criticism from people that I wouldn't take advice from. And I found that a pretty good rule to live by. I mean, at this point, I've had so many people say such nasty stuff about me on Twitter that it really just doesn't faze me at all. I know what these people are, I know what they do, but it's the awareness of troll Twitter and how they function that lets me just let all these comments roll off my back. I mean, even the creation of this video is like suicide on Twitter. You know, they're gonna say that I care too much or that I'm obsessed with them, that I'm a pathetic loser with nothing else to do but fixate on people on Twitter while they live rent-free in my head. If I'm lucky, they might share this video around and mock me and I can get some views. Don't forget to pick up a stupid t-shirt at pandashirts.com. But, like, being interested in this as a phenomenon is not pathetic. Like, I truly find this really interesting. It's like a social experiment. And, I mean, I'm one of their favorite topics. And criticizing people for responding to harassment, it's essentially like the Twitter troll equivalent of calling people triggered. But, guys, if there's a take to come away with here, it's that Twitter is bad, actually. It's like a bubble of toxicity on there, and I do feel like being inside that bubble can kind of skew your worldview into thinking that a lot of people are like that. But the real world is actually a much nicer place than Twitter. Worst case scenario on Twitter is that it will normalize harassment for you and kind of turn you into one of them. Like, it kind of happens so gradually that you don't even realize it until you're suddenly saying like really nasty stuff about people until you're like totally fine with hearing something about a stranger you don't know and then like putting them on blast for it. I'd say if you don't have to be on Twitter, I don't recommend it. I'm on there because I have a lot of friends I keep in touch with daily that I probably wouldn't keep in touch with otherwise, and I have the tools to like not internalize the harassment I get. But yeah, like if you're not on Twitter already, I don't recommend it. Tweeting is bad and nobody should do it. That's about it. If Troll Twitter finds this, I'm sure you can read all of their thoughts in the comments below. Bye! Oh. Hi, baby. This is Hazel. She's part of the reason why I don't have any time to make videos.